afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with great Coach Medina with us. And let's have hear from him actually directly. And yeah,
Hello, Dr. Moby. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. And as far as I understand, I had discussion with him before that, and he is really great coach and teaching a lot of debates and holding competitions. And I think we were talking about movies, so let's know a little more about it.
Yes. So my name is Dr. Christopher Medina, but most people call me Coach. They call me Coach because for 7 years I was the head speech and debate coach of the Great Debaters, the team that was made famous by the Denzel Washington movie. I'm also the founder and executive director of the National HBCU Speech and Debate Association. So that's kind of my background with speech and debate. Is I've been teaching it and competing in it for a number of decades.
Okay. And do you think right now there is more need of that kind of conversation and debating these issues because first of all, because of COVID and the whole situation because of that?
Yeah, actually, I think that COVID has shined a spotlight on our education system. And that our education system, one, is not engaging our students. And second, it's not preparing them for the economy and the evolving economy. Really, what's going on is schools are not preparing students with how to think. They're teaching them what to think. So we need to change our education system to look more towards teaching students skills that they need, like critical thinking, communication, the ability to see things from multiple perspectives, which creates empathy. And so there needs to be a fundamental focus shift for our educational system.
So tell me about your programs. You have done a lot of programs for the school, right?
Correct.
And so what age group normally you deal with?
So I've been teaching college for a number of years. I started coaching speech and debate at the high school level, but have been coaching speech and debate at the college level. But in addition to that, I've actually, when I was at Wiley College, I created and implemented and studied the first debate across the curriculum program in higher education. And the goal of that program actually was to teach the fundamentals of argumentation to students who are incoming, and then reinforce that with debates or discussion assignments in every classification of every major. And then I actually studied it and its effect on critical thinking and engagement. So now what we're doing is creating programs that we can roll out at schools and school districts, really K through 20, both at elementary, middle school, high school, and collegiate levels.
So how can we, so how it is, do you give it like specific days or program to the schools? How it's implemented pretty much?
So the idea is to actually teach teachers how to integrate these high engagement activities into their classrooms. These activities which create critical thought, whether they be debates or discussions. For example, if you're in a history class and you're learning about Brown versus Board of Education, we might set up a mock trial with students as justices and other students, proposing this initiative and others negating, where the justices can then ask questions about their case and argumentation and so forth. So it gets them to look deeper and to truly analyze, the material itself. When we implemented, this program at Wiley, we saw that 82% of students reported that they learned more because of their debating the material. So it's that high activity, high engagement activity, as well as the analysis of the material, which creates that engagement and creates that learning.
Yeah, that's actually very smart. I mean, I can imagine if I was kid at that age and then, if they had that kind of activity, that is, because first of all, you're going to go home and study about it, or at least should know. But even if I don't know anything, still I can learn a lot about just watching it, because that's going to stick a lot in mind rather than reading a book and then kind of coming up. And many times, maybe it happens that when we are seeing that, that point sticks to us. Maybe actually it's for me, even I maybe know that story 100 times, but that angles, never kind of occurred to me, or to someone. Oh, maybe that part was missing in that story, right?
Yeah, when students are reading a book, it's more of a passive learning, right? So they're absorbing the material, but they're not really utilizing it. So there's no analysis. It
Uh,
really stops at more of the identification, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy.
mm,
But when you actually have to utilize that material, know that material to be able to answer questions or refute arguments,
mm.
you have to, that material has to be ingrained within you in order to be able to recall it immediately and how to actually utilize it within the arguments themselves. So it's a much deeper form of learning. It creates higher order thinking skills.
That is true. Now, what age group do you find kind of most helpful to actually learn that, or more engaged rather than?
Actually, all age groups. And I'll give you an example. My wife actually teaches pre-K, so
Mm,
pre-kindergarten. And she, before the holidays, had said, I'm having a real hard time with my students.
mm,
We try to get them up and speaking. We try to ask them what they want for Christmas and so forth. And they're not engaging. And I said, try this. Take a student, have them stand in the front of the room and ask them what the best toy in the world is, and ask them why. And they'll give you an answer. And then ask another student, what's the best toy you think in the world and why? And why are they wrong?
mm,
And it created a debate, right? So
mm.
it doesn't have to be a formalized, debate. It can be a discussion.
Mm.
And students are, immediately engaged when they get to, talk about how they feel about something or talk about their ideas. And so that engagement, it creates learning at all levels.
Oh yeah, I mean that is very smart, actually, very smart. Because you just create out of nowhere, and I always find, if we had, when we were kids and learning in school, if we had this kind of class where I had to go to debate class, I'd say, oh my God, what kind of class is that? But if you kind of mix it up with, like you're saying, give a student an essay, it just kind of natural flow, and then you're not nervous and you are actually at ease. And I mean, at my age, I remember, I my first speech was actually on the self confidence, and I remember there was a VIP came in. Basically, I had to present before Minister of Education. So that was my so they asked me to do that. That was, I had to speak in Arabic, and that was my first language, or I had no idea, but I kind of crammed up the whole Arabic thing, and then um, I just said in, but I was trembling.
And that's okay. That's okay. You can reinforce that confidence by letting students know that it's okay when they're up and presenting, right?
Yeah.
So if you reaffirm them and say, that's great, what do you think about this? It can actually spur them to engage even more, right? So, there are different ways to engage students. And you're right. It is so important to get students to have that confidence in those abilities.
Mm.
A recent survey with CEOs, about 90% of them said that there's a skills gap that exists. And a lot of those skills are problem solving, analytical skills, communication, working in groups, and so forth. And so teaching students these debate skills is going to help them in the evolving economy.
Mm. Okay, and for a basic learner to start with, who's a shy person, or has never, what are some of the steps they can kind of learn to, or at least practice a little bit?
Actually, truth be told, I'm very, very shy. I'm an introvert. I like to say I'm an introvert by nature and extrovert by trade.
Mm.
And when I first started, one of the things that used to help me, and I always tell my students this, is I would think to myself, okay, nobody's ever died from this. I'm going to be okay, And if you can actually reassure yourself you're going to get through this. There's a thing that we do to ourselves. It's called negative self-talk. I can't do this. I'm not going to be good. I'm not good enough. Turn that into positive self-talk. I can do this. I'm good enough, and that will help with that confidence level. Self-affirmations, in the mornings, I'm strong, I'm powerful. People want to hear what I have to say. And if you keep telling yourself that, eventually it will seep into your subconscious.
Hmm. And I think that is true. And I think for most people like myself, I was also like earlier years, I've never used to have any. I mean, forget about I'm now in TV all the time, but at that time I wouldn't even have 5 sentences, because I was like, oh my God, what people will think. I know what happened after I turned now a certain age. Everything is gone, and I have been doing this forever, but it's not true.
Right. And that's the other thing is the second step is fake it until you make it. Right.
Yeah, I get it.
If you project confidence, then people will believe that you're confident, even if you don't feel confident inside.
Mm-hmm.
So your biology affects your psychology, right? So if looking confident, eventually you'll start to think confidently.
Yes, and that is so true. And I think people should never underestimate their powers. And everybody thinks that they have these. And this is, I mean, I see both ways. Some people think they have 5 qualities or 1 quality or 2, or they are strong. That's good to know your strengths too. But there are other things which you are strong always, but you never even explored it or never thought of that because A, you never practiced it. B, you didn't get chance, or all of the above, right? So if you basically tried that and might hate it at first, but maybe that is your strength, and many times I see that happening all the time. I
Yeah,
mean,
a lot of people think that public speaking skills or communication skills are you're born with them, but you can develop them, right? You can work on them and hone those skills, and over time, you'll get a lot better with them. But you got to start somewhere, and you just have to start trying and doing.
And that is true. So also, I want to ask you also, which I've seen over the years, what's the difference between girls and boys in terms of that capability?
There is none.
No.
I believe that men and women have the same cognitive abilities. I have in a debate competed against women who whooped me, and there is no difference in terms of cognitive abilities. It depends on the culture that those individuals are in and the nurturing that those individuals have. But in terms of actual cognitive ability and biological cognitive ability, there's no difference.
Okay. Now, what I meant to say is, would they speak more sentences per, for arguing sake, or would they, the style? What I meant is the style. Would they be a little different how they perceive or argue?
Yeah, and I think that there is a difference, right? So studies show that men actually think more linearly, right? They
Yeah,
think step by step.
that's what I.
And women have a tendency to think cyclically in cycles or circles.
Yeah.
And the reasons for that could be upbringing, could be culture, could be whatever it is, but the studies show that men and women do think differently. So the organization of thoughts and learning that organization and implementing that organization really helps, which is something that debate teaches, which is why I've been whooped by men and women
Yeah.
because it teaches that organization.
No, yeah, what I found is very interesting is, we say that, for women, they can actually use both part of their cerebral hemisphere and actually argue sometimes way better than we do. We tend to be very straight shooter and just say yes, no, or kind of maybe a little bit, but they can look a little far and they can just go on sideways and can really beat you because if you're not paying attention, because you get all of a sudden, oh my God, you never thought that, because we are like, many times I've seen, we are more like tunnel type approach, tunnel vision. So
It's
we
that
don't,
linear approach, right?
yeah, linear tunnel, whatever you call. So we are not looking left and right because for some reason we don't, you know. I mean, I
Yeah,
like
and actually, what you said, has a lot of weight to it because when individuals think linearly, right, they don't think in terms of connecting to the emotion or the pathos, as we call it in speech making, and so like storytelling, right? Storytelling has a lot of power emotionally, but also in terms of being able to teach lessons or tie ideas together. So those individuals who have a broader scope and can see to their sides and utilize storytelling and so forth actually have a greater advantage. You're right.
Yeah, so that's what I found very fascinating is just how they, that is, I mean, there could be little difference how they perceive, or, sometimes, the cultural differences has originated, but you're absolutely right. There's no difference in cognitive abilities. Probably, if I had to grade, I would say they are a little more cognitively more stronger than us in terms of, you know ability to analyze things sideways and kind of 3D. So pretty much we are like 1D or 2D, and they will give the 3D kind of component. And so then you have to be a little bit careful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, a
many.
3D thinker is dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, 3D is that because there is emotional, then there is as a straight 2D which we are thinking, but somehow we yeah, and there's like both ways. You can say yes, most of things probably you don't need 3D, or some you do, but if you have capability, of course, by all means, that is way better. Now tell me what things we can do. I know you are implementing a lot of schools programs and helping them. So, what other schools can benefit where Coach Medina is not there? So, what things they should be doing?
So they need to develop activities that are going to be engaging to the students and get them thinking and up and speaking. Those are the main requirements. And however it is that they do that, whether it is, a traditional debate, whether we have other events when we compete. One of the events that we have is called interpretation of literature. What we do is we actually make argument with literature and then act out the literature. So that appeals to a different type of students, creative students, and helps with social emotional learning. So there are different types of activities, and it doesn't have to be just a straight debate. As long as it's engaging the students, getting them to think critically, and getting them up and speaking, then the students are going to develop these skills that are going to help them.
Mhm. And who do you, some of the role models, I'm sure you have a lot of them. So tell me a few which anybody can actually watch and get inspired.
So one of my role models, and I think who is absolutely amazing, is Barack Obama. And I don't care what you think about his politics in terms of his cognitive ability, his presentation style, his presentation skills, the words that he uses, all of those things that a good speech maker utilizes, he harnesses every one of those. So Barack Obama is an amazing speaker. And like I said, regardless of politics, there are, if we look in history, of course, MLK, probably one of the most prolific speakers ever. Because he had such a unique ability to touch the emotions while also having amazing support to his arguments and structured so well, which are all the different elements that you need in order to be effective. So those are probably two of the most prolific.
Hmm. And my favorite was Ronald Reagan. I mean, I like the.
Amazing. The great communicator, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've still kind of, I've seen him many times. Luckily, I was, growing up at that age, and I used to watch his speech, and I said, "Oh my God, this guy knows what to say." His words were so simple, but so mixed up with emotions, and delivery was so perfect because he was probably actor.
Yeah, and actually, I think that that has a lot to do with it, right? He was in touch with his emotions. He was able to portray those emotions. Like he could go from a speech like "tear down this wall" to when the Challenger crashed, and his speech to "touch the face of God." Absolutely, from one extreme to another, but was able to use that emotional ability to convey exactly what the audience needed to hear at that time. Because we have to remember that a speech or discourse or what have you is not necessarily for us, it's for our audience. And he understood that and was able to tap the emotions to make it more effective for the audience. Amazing speaker.
Yes, yes, and I mean over the years, yes, Barack Obama is also favorite, but the only thing which I sometimes find is that some of the words they could be a little more difficult to kind of maybe he's so intellectual, that it goes above you sometimes, that
Yeah, in actuality, you're right, because a lot of people think that when you use vocabulary words, or higher level vocabulary words, that you're speaking above them, and you're not speaking to them, you're speaking at them. So that can affect. Actually, I think that that was one of the reasons why I was effective or successful, is because growing up, I didn't know I was smart. I really thought I was stupid.
Mm,
My family worked in warehouses. I thought I would work in a warehouse,
mhm.
and I didn't know that I had learning disabilities. And when I got into debate, I was able to break down concepts and speak to the average person, which is why I was more effective than a lot of students who were in the honors classes and so forth. So you're absolutely right. You can speak above somebody, and it actually has a negative effect.
Mm. And that I have seen a lot, when I was also growing up, and one of the actually thing they used to look at is how many complex words you can speak or how many things to kind of show off a little bit that how, well versed are you with literature or blah, blah, blah. But I find now that at that time maybe I thought that was the way, that was the style, but now I think that was totally wrong style, because like you said, if you cannot come down to a normal person and just cannot express and talk, this is kind of very hard. Now being a doctor, I've seen that. I mean, my book is called Keep It Simple: Diet, Sleep and Exercise. Now, I have tried to kind of come up with very simple words and kind of really lower the vocabulary way down from medical terminology, because for me, being doctor is very easy to use medical terms. And there many times patients start looking at it and say, what does that mean even, so but then it comes to my mind saying, oh, you don't even know that simple term.
Yep.
But the problem is, then I back off and say, no, he's right, he or she is right, because how would they know? They're not medical, you know
Yeah,
the,
there's actually two things to that. One is that you have to understand who your audience is, right?
yeah.
Different audiences, you're going to speak differently, to those audiences. So if you're doing a speech or giving a speech to a general audience, you don't want to speak over their heads. But if you're speaking at a medical conference, your language would be different, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
But also the second thing is that there's actually a wide sweeping movement that's gaining momentum that is shifting towards plain language, that legal terms, medical terms, people aren't understanding these. And so they're not engaged in whatever it is. They're not engaged in their legal defense. They're not engaged in, even their medical treatments and so forth, because they can't understand them. So there's actually a movement that's going more towards plain language. And you're absolutely right. I think it's a necessity.
Yeah, yeah, and since that day and now, so my book is kind of, we try to do such a simple, but sometimes still I get a comment saying, the language you have used in the book, it just goes above me. And I said, I'm sorry, but okay, we'll try to watch my shows, and because I kind of tried to dilute as much as I could, but still, it is natural for me to kind of slip once a while into terminology which I don't want. but it will happen because it is how I was trained for so many years. So it's going to happen. That's true.
Yeah,
uh, but
yeah,
in medical conference, yeah, that's true. But same stands for, I think, medical conference also. I have to tell that, also for the medical research and a lot of things. Unfortunately, still is not able to help a lot of common people.
right.
They will be good at number of cases. They'll be good at research. They'll be good at data. They'll say, okay, this is this is that. And did it help? Not really. Now give you example of COVID vaccine. Look at the vaccine. We have COVID, and they are not able to control for so many months, and right now, and such a disaster. But the vaccine protocol, finally they got that, and now they're developing. This technology was developed 30 years ago. The
Mm,
original vaccine, which we get every flu shot every year, that was developed in 1900s. Okay,
mm.
and the question is, why in the world there was a delay from 1900 to that. I mean, we can reach moon, but we can't make a vaccine even. So
Yeah, and actually, it creates a lot of fear, right? Because a lot
yeah,
of people think, well, this deadly virus, and they've created this vaccine in 9 or 10 months or whatever it is. And they don't understand the background because no one's explaining it to them. No one
yeah.
explains that they started this decades ago and they're just putting in, the relevant material that makes it effective for this virus.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding, but there's also the misunderstanding because people are not analyzing the information that's given to them, right?
Mhm.
So when people are given this information that says there's this vaccine available, they simply look at it and feel a certain way and justify that feeling rather than looking at it and looking at the background of that information, looking at the facts, looking that it was started decades ago.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a fundamental desire for people to just look at the information that is fed to them rather than diving deeper and actually analyzing.
Yeah, and that is it was kind of eye-opening still. And I think the debate as well as communication is so important for all reasons. I mean, COVID is one example, mask is another example. I think the government has not done so far. I mean, as much education. There was kind of mixed messages first, and that didn't have. I hope they keep on kind of improving lives and making difference. And I think we all are in it and are together. And I think our job is my job, your job, that to promote all that for everyone. Right.
Yeah, and you made a great point about saying we're all in it together. One of the problems, is not just in terms of COVID or those types of debates, the political debates, but
Mhm.
there's also the social debates.
Mhm.
There is racial relations. There are differences, fundamental differences among different groups in society. And
Mhm.
because we're not having discussions, we're
Mhm.
not seeing things from other people's perspectives, right?
Mhm.
So that's creating conflict rather than having civil discourse and try to look for solutions.
And that is great. Yeah, it was pleasure talking to you, and I personally learned a lot.
Dr. Moby, thank you so much for your time. It was an
Okay,
absolute pleasure to be here.
okay. So, any final message for my audience?
Well, the only thing I want to say is that we can change the education system and we can help our kids to be prepared for the future.
And together.
Yes, together, absolutely, always together.
Always together.
Yeah.
And so let's do together and keep working on together. Take care. Thank you for watching our show. Take care.
Bye bye.